Yo everybody, Alex Pullen here. I'm really excited to share this short video with you guys. People often ask me how I take photographs with so much detail. I'm going to show you a couple secrets to getting images with what we would call high dynamic range. This image was taken on New Year's Eve here in Northern Thailand, where I'm currently based. I took a handful of good photos, but I wanted to share this one because it posed a significant problem. Although the light was prime, photographing the front of this pagoda backlit by the sunset was a real challenge. Most of the time, this type of photo would have been underexposed in the foreground or overexposed in the background, making the sky either wash out or the foreground and the pagoda too dark to see. To capture this image the way that I wanted to, I needed to use something called a raw file. Capturing a raw file is critical because a raw file contains significantly more data than a normal JPEG image would. Here is the original image. The image is pretty underexposed, kind of flat. It's hard to tell what's even going on. In this case, that's what we want. With digital processing, it's usually better to underexpose your image a bit and bring the shadows and blacks back up. The goal is to get most of the data balanced throughout your histogram. The histogram is a key tool used in understanding where we can draw detail out of the file. What I'm going to do is push and pull these plots on the graph by dragging these bars labeled correspondingly: whites, highlights, midtones, shadows, and blacks. Since I do this often, I have a few different recipes for processing images. Here's one way to process this photo. The first thing that I'm going to do is bring in the shadows a little bit, just to see what we get. I'm also going to bring up the blacks, and then bring up the exposure. And right here, I like this because we can see the front of the pagoda nicely, and the sky is overexposed, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the highlights back down, and also with that bring the whites back down. Just for reference, I'm going to come back to my histogram, and now we've shifted a lot of the data up towards the highlights and the midtones, as well as the general exposure area here. The image is flattened out a little bit, so I'm going to increase the contrast a little bit, spread the data on that graph apart. And I still like this now. We brought a lot of the detail back in. I'm just going to bring it in closer and crop it, which helps us emphasize the particular elements of the image that we want. I'm going to put it about right there. And still, I feel like the highlights are still too bright. And so I'm going to play with the shadows and the blacks. Add a little clarity, which tightens black lines. And here's something that will help bring in a lot of blue in the sky. It's kind of white and washed out, very light color blue. And so I'm going to go down to this color section and select my blues, and then bring the luminance down. It's going to bring the color, the tone of those blues down. I like that right there. Sharpening enhances white lines and crispens the image. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little vignette around the edges, which helps bring the focal point into the middle of the image, feather it out a little bit. And I'm going to come back up here, bring it to about right there, exposure, and then I'm going to bring the luminance and the blues down even a little more, maybe a little more contrast. All right, here's the image after post-processing, and here it is before. So again, a major difference in bringing out the amount of detail. Again, bringing the shadows up and into the image, and bringing the highlights down to accentuate the different parts of the image that we want to share. To answer the question, this is how I take photos with a lot of detail. By using raw file capture, shooting at sunset or sunrise when the light is softer, and not be afraid to experiment with editing software. Thanks for watching, and if you'd like to see more tutorials and updates, hit the subscribe button below. Or if you have a question about photography, send it to connect@alexpullen.com.